The camp was buried deep in the countryside, far from any town or highway, where the dirt roads twisted like veins through fields of black soil. At night, the only lights came from the faint orange glow of our lanterns and the distant flicker of fireflies along the tree line. The cabins stood in uneven rows, their roofs sagging, their windows hollow, as if no one had stayed in them for years. Even the crickets seemed hesitant, their cores breaking only when the wind moved through the tall grass. I remember standing near the edge of the clearing, listening to the silence stretch and fold over itself. The sky was low and heavy, the stars dimmed by thin layers of mist rolling in from the fields. I thought it was just my imagination when I heard footsteps in the dirt behind me, soft and deliberate, though everyone else had already gone inside. I turned, but nothing was there, only the cabin still and waiting. For a moment, I told myself it was nothing, just the night, just the wind. But when I stepped onto the porch of my cabin and reached for the door, I saw in the corner of my eye something pale standing between the trees, watching me in silence. I never should have opened the door that night. The field stretched wide beneath the pale winter moon. Frost clung to the tall grass, crunching softly under my boots. The air smelled faintly of damp earth, sharp and cold. I first noticed it a few nights ago. A lantern, alone, swaying, though no hand held it. At first, I thought it was someone else, another camper, or maybe a lost hiker. But each night, it appeared in the same spot, and each night, it drew closer, closer to the cabin. The light trembled, warm yet thin, casting shadows across the frozen field. It moved slowly, almost lazily, like it knew exactly where it wanted to go. I could hear the faint scrape of metal against grass. Or maybe it was the wind. Either way, it whispered. I stayed inside the cabin, the walls creaking around me. I watched through the frost-lined window as the lantern drifted, hovering just beyond the tree line. Sometimes I thought I saw the glow outline a figure, but when I blinked, there was nothing, only the light. Each night it came closer. Tonight, it rested just outside the window. I could see its reflection in the glass, a pale, quivering circle, and for a moment I swore I could see a hand, a thin, impossibly long hand, pressed lightly against the lantern, but then it vanished. I tried to ignore it, focus on the fireplace. The wood hissed and popped, warm air filling the cabin. Still, a shadow lingered in my peripheral vision, soft and fluttering like smoke. I felt the cold through the walls, colder than winter should allow. The lantern swayed gently, teasing me. Closer, closer. And the night was so quiet I could hear my own breath. Long, uneven, shallow. The hum of something low and steady drifted from the field. Or maybe it was the lantern itself, vibrating, alive. I pressed my palm to the glass. The warmth didn't reach me. The glow didn't feel like fire, not really. It was something else. Watching, patient, waiting. I left the curtains open. I couldn't look away. Every flicker of its flame felt like a heartbeat, slow and irregular, calling me outside. I thought I glimpsed a face, blurred, pale, eyes too deep to belong to anyone living. Then a gust of wind rattled the window, and it was gone. But the lantern never truly leaves. I wake to the faintest echo of its light, hovering near the cabin edge. And sometimes in the deepest moment before sleep, I hear it, the soft, uneven scrape of metal across frost, a quiet breath, hovering just beyond the pain. I tell myself it's only my imagination. I tell myself it's just the wind. Still, tonight, it rests closer than ever. I see it in the corner of my eye, faint but steady, a circle of pale light that does not belong to the world around it. And I know, without looking directly, that it waits, not for me to move, not for me to call. It waits simply to arrive. I can feel the hush of the field pressing in, the quiet that swallows sound, that swallows thought. I hear a whisper in the metal sway, a murmur almost too soft to hear. And for the first time, I wonder if it ever moves on, or if it waits, always, for someone to open the door. The lantern sways again, closer, closer still, and I can only breathe and watch and wait. The cabin stood at the edge of the clearing. Its walls were darkened by years of weather, the wood swollen and gray. All the windows were nailed shut from the outside. I had walked past 100 times, never daring to look too closely. But at night, something changes. I first notice a faint, pale handprints, pressing lightly against the glass. They shimmered in the moonlight, fleeting and cold. By morning, they were gone, vanished as if the night had swallowed them whole. I would lie awake, listening. The wind made the trees rustle, but inside the cabin, I could hear a soft tapping, like fingernails dragging over wood, a slow, deliberate rhythm, sometimes accompanied by a low sigh, a whisper, a breath. One night I approached. The snow crunched beneath my boots. Each step made my chest tighten. The air smelled of old pine and something sour, damp and metallic. I reached the window, tracing the frozen glass, and then I saw it, a small hand, pale as frost, pressed against the inside. I froze. It didn't move. It didn't pull away. It simply waited. I stepped back. The air thickened. The cold pressed into my bones. A soft scraping rose from the cabin, like tiny claws moving across the wood from within. I told myself it was impossible. The windows were nailed shut. No one could be inside. Night after night it returned, a different window each time. Sometimes a single handprint, sometimes two, sometimes dozens, lining the glass like a warning I could almost, but not quite, read. I tried to stay calm. I told myself it was a frost, condensation, shadows, but the pattern was too deliberate. The prints were never the same. The hands, small, delicate, childlike, pressed closer to the center each time, as if trying to reach out. Once, I saw the shadow of a face, not fully formed, but faint, blurry, pale, pressed against the glass. Its mouth opened just a little. No sound came, but I felt the pressure of 1,000 unspoken words. The wind always died around that cabin. Even on nights when the trees were shaking and the air was thick with frost, the cabin's immediate space remained still, silent, except for the soft tapping and the faint scraping. I began to dread walking past it. Even in daylight, the windows seemed darker than the shadows around them, a weight in the air, like the cabin was holding its breath. And I began to notice the feeling following me when I slept, when I ate, even when I laughed. A hollow gaze from behind the wood, watching. The night I touched the door, I felt the metal nails under my fingers, cold, rusted, unyielding, and still I felt it watching. I pulled my hand away. The hair on my arms rose. That night, I lay in my own cabin, listening to the wind swirl around the trees. I imagined the hands pressing against my window, and in my mind, I could see dozens of small, pale faces, eyes wide, staring, waiting. I do not go near that cabin anymore. I pass it quickly, avoiding the windows. Even the path seems to curve away from it. Yet sometimes when the moon is full and the air is still, I swear I hear the faint, slow tapping from inside, a whispering sigh, and a soft, chilling promise. Waiting. The pines stretch tall and dark along the edge of the clearing. Their trunks rise like shadows, heavy with needles and the chill of late autumn. The air smells of wet bark and moss, sharp and damp. Even the fog seems thicker here, curling low to the ground, hiding the forest floor. I first heard it at dusk, a soft whistle, high-pitched, almost melodic. It drifted through the trees, carrying the tune of a camp song we had sung earlier in the day. But no one was there. I stopped walking. The whistle rose, faded, and rose again, coming from deeper in the pines. It mimicked laughter, light and teasing, almost cheerful. And yet it was wrong. The notes were stretched hollow, like the wind had learned to copy human voice. I told myself it was a camper, maybe returning late, but the paths were empty. No footprints marred the fallen needles. The soft fog muffled the ground. Still, the whistling followed. I tried to ignore it, kept my gaze on the cabin, the firelight inside. But even through the window, I could feel it circling, moving closer. The trees whispered, not with wind, but with static-like rustling, small echoes of the tune. I stepped toward the edge of the forest. The whistle paused, a heartbeat. Then it started again, closer now, weaving the camp song into a faint echo of my own steps. I froze. The music matched my rhythm, my breathing. A shadow slid between the trees. Or maybe it was a fog playing tricks. I backed away slowly. The whispering wind picked up, carrying the whistling in soft waves. It sounded almost cheerful at first, then stretched, hollow, empty, like something had learned the song and removed the warmth from it. I stayed in the cabin that night, pressed the window. The fire flickered low. The whistle came closer, and I could see the fog curling in unnatural patterns. I imagined shapes, tiny figures stepping between the pines. Or maybe the shapes were my own imagination, forced by fear. The whistling followed me to sleep. I dreamed of walking the forest path. The tune rose behind me, repeating the words of songs I didn't remember singing. I woke to silence. But the next night it began again. It is always the same. At dusk, the pines hum. A soft whistle, almost playful. It mimics voices, names, laughter. I hear it through the walls of the cabin, carried by the cold, damp air. Even when I shut my eyes, it circles me, wrapping the familiar tune around my bones. I have never gone into the pines after dark. The villagers whisper about campers who vanish, following melodies that lead nowhere. I do not doubt them. The whistle, it waits. I have learned not to whistle back, not to step into the fog, because the pines remember, and the tune, it always finds someone to follow. Tonight, I can hear it again. Soft, insistent, rising through the trunks. I tell myself it is only the wind, but I know better. It is waiting just beyond the clearing. And one day, if I am not careful, I will hear my own name whistle back at me. The fire burned low, the logs hissing and sighing as the last embers glowed. The air smelled of smoke and damp pine needles, sharp and sweet. The night was still, almost unnaturally so, and the shadows stretched long across the clearing. I noticed it at the far side of the pit, a figure, sitting, almost perfectly still, outlined by the flickering flames. I blinked. The ground beneath it showed no footprints, not a single mark in the ash or dirt. And yet, there it sat, watching the fire, calm, patient. I want to call out, to ask who it was, to break the quiet, but the air pressed down, heavy and cold. My voice felt swallowed before it even left my throat. The figure shifted slightly, not enough to leave a trace. Only the flame danced across its shape, making it look alive, and yet impossibly still. I watched, breath shallow, heart ticking in my ears. The fire cast strange shadows across the clearing, and I thought I saw movement in the darkness beyond the circle. Something just beyond the reach of the light, following, waiting. I took a step closer. The figure did not move, and yet I felt it notice me. A gaze that pressed without eyes. A weight I could not see, but could feel in the cold air. The logs shifted, the embers crackled, and the shadows seemed to stretch, blending with the night. Every time I blinked, it looked closer, not moving by steps, but by some impossible, silent drift. I thought I heard breathing, soft, uneven, just beyond the crackle of the fire. Or maybe it was a fire itself. But then the ember light flickered across the figure's shape, and for a heartbeat, I could swear it leaned forward. I froze. My fingers tightened around the small stone I held. It felt warm in my hand, though the air was bitterly cold. I wanted to throw it, to prove the shadow was real, that it could be moved, but my arm did not obey. The wind rose suddenly, stirring the pine needles beyond the clearing. The figure remained, still, watching, and the ground still bore no trace of where it had come from or where it might go. I could hear soft footsteps, or perhaps whispers, moving around the fire. Every rustle of leaves, every creak which sounded louder, amplified by the silence. The shadows seemed to pulse with the rhythm of something alive, breathing in time with the forest itself. I finally dared to exhale, a long, trembling release of air. The figure did not flinch, but the flames flickered in a strange pattern, as if reacting. I felt it, a presence brushing against the edges of my mind. Not cruel, not angry, just patient. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes fixed on the shadow. Every step felt heavier than the last, and the fire, it began to dim, swallowing the pit in blackness, leaving only the outline of that impossible figure. When I finally turned and ran toward the cabin, I glanced back. The figure remained, unmoved, watching. That night, I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadow again, sitting at the fire pit, outlined by flames that no longer existed. And I knew it would be there again tomorrow, and the day after, and every night after that. The forest keeps its secrets well. The fire pit keeps its watcher well. And I keep my distance. Still, sometimes, I swear I feel it moving closer in the dark, just beyond the edge of my vision, waiting for the fire to die low. The cabin smelled of damp wood and faint mildew. The moon spilled pale light through the cracks in the walls. Weak, but enough to cast shadows across the floor. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. I first noticed it in the corner bunk. The mattress would creak, slowly sinking as if someone climbed in, but the bed was empty, always empty. I would watch for hours, waiting for a shape, a sound, a sign. Nothing came, only the mattress dipping and rising like a breathing thing. Sometimes I thought I heard whispers, soft, low, carried through the wood planks of the floor. They didn't speak words, just murmurs that brushed my name, almost gentle. I told myself it was the wind. I told myself it was the old cabin settling. But the bed continued its quiet motion, night after night, a slow, deliberate weight pressing down, then easing, leaving the surface smooth again. And yet, I could feel it, the pressure lingering in the air. I tried to touch it once. My hand hovered above the mattress, cold, empty. And then a shiver ran up my spine, as though invisible fingers had brushed my arm. I withdrew my hand. The creaking stopped. For a moment, I slept in the other bunk, wide awake, listening. Every breath seemed louder, echoing through the cabin. The mattress shifted again. A slow dip, like someone carefully climbing in, and I could almost hear the faint exhale of a sleeper. Almost, but not quite. The next morning, the bed was smooth. No sign of weight. No footprints on the floor. The blanket undisturbed. Yet I could still feel the hollow imprint of something unseen. I avoided the bunk as much as I could, even when the cabin grew too cold. I kept the covers drawn tight around myself, facing away. But sometimes when I closed my eyes, I could feel the mattress sink beneath me. A phantom weight. A reminder that I was never truly alone. Once, I thought I saw a shadow pass beneath the bunk. Thin, flickering, like smoke curling along the floorboards. I held my breath, frozen. When I looked again, nothing remained. Only the quiet, the mattress slowly returning to its flat, empty shape. The longer I stayed, the heavier the presence felt. Not malicious, just patient. Watching, waiting. And every night, the creak would come again, always from the same bunk. I have stopped speaking of it. No one else stays in this cabin. No one else would hear. Even if they did, they wouldn't believe me. I do not know if it is a memory or a visitor or something I am not meant to see. Tonight, I sit at the edge of the bed, tracing the blankets with my fingertips. The air tastes damp and metallic. The shadows stretch long across the cabin floor. I can hear the faint settling of the wood. The bunk creaks again, a slow dip, and I do not move. I do not breathe too loudly. I simply watch and wait and wonder if the shape will ever appear. The mattress sighs under its own weight. Empty, but not gone. The wooden sign creaked softly in the night, even though the air was still. Not a breeze stirred the tall grass around it. The letters carved into the wood glinted pale under the moonlight. I had walked past it countless times in the day. It read, "Welcome to Camp Pine Hollow." The letters straight and familiar, but at night they change. I noticed at first when the fog rolled in. The letters seemed to shift ever so slightly. I blinked and they were different. Spelling names I didn't recognize. I leaned closer, breath fogging the cold air. The wood smelled of rain, old sap, and a faint tang of something iron-like. The names rearranged themselves as I stared, as if the sign had a mind of its own. A whisper of movement, soft as exhaled breath, brushed my ear. I stepped back, the letters blurred. And then, clearer than ever, I could read them. Not campers I knew, not names of anyone alive. A strange alphabet of faces I could not see. I touched the sign. Cold, damp, rough. It felt hollow beneath my fingers, as though the wood had space inside where nothing should be. And for a heartbeat, I thought I saw something shifting behind the letters. Movement too subtle to name, too deliberate to ignore. The next night, the letters were different again. Another set of names, rearranged as though they would have remembered every person who had ever come near. Every night, the same change. Every night, the fog seemed thicker, curling around the sign, brushing my cheeks. I heard something else then, a soft scraping, faint like fingernails moving across bark. A hum rose from a wooden sign, low and steady, almost musical. Or maybe it was the wind, though the air was perfectly still. The hum pressed against my chest, and I felt the pull of something unseen. I stepped away. The letters twisted again, forming words that made no sense. I do not know if the sign calls to anyone else, but I feel it calling to me, pulling me closer. I tried to ignore it, walk past quickly, pretend the names were just tricks of the fog. But the letters follow my gaze. Even in my sleep, I see them shift. Even in the quiet of my cabin, I hear the faint creak of wood bending. Sometimes I hear whispers, carried on the fog, naming campers long gone, calling softly, politely, and I know the sign will not stop. It watches, it waits, and it remembers. Tonight, I went back. The letters had changed again, spelling names I had never heard, yet somehow felt familiar. The wind, still absent, seemed to stir the fog closer to my face. A faint rustling like fabric or skin brushed my arm. I stepped back. The letters blurred and shifted again. The names rearranged into something longer, something continuous, and I knew I should leave, but I could not stop staring. The old camp sign creaks, sways, and the names linger in my mind long after I have walked away. I do not know what it wants. I do not know if it ever tires. I only know that the letters wait, patient as shadows, and that someday I may walk too close, and it will remember me, too. The lake lay still beneath the dusk sky. Mist curled low over the water, soft and cold. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and algae, sharp with the bite of evening. All around, the forest hummed in quiet, except for the gentle lapping of water against the shore. I first saw him there, at the edge of the lake, a boy, small and pale, kneeling to skip stones across the glassy surface. His hair was dark, wet, plastered his forehead. His laughter carried faintly across the water, hollow, like a wind moving through a tunnel. I called out once. His head lifted slowly, but his face blurred, not blurry like poor eyesight or shadow. It was impossible to focus on, features melting, edges shifting as though the lake itself refused to let me see. I stepped closer. The stones skipped perfectly across the water, but each ripple faded too quickly, leaving only silence. And when I blinked, the boy was still there, kneeling, pale, watching. I wanted to reach him, to say something, to touch the small shoulder. But as I drew near, he sank, slowly, silently, the water rising to swallow him completely. No splash, no disturbance, only the faintest ripple fading outward. I stared. The water reflected the twilight sky, but no trace of the boy remained. Only the cold mist clung to the shore, curling around my ankles, brushing my skin with wet fingers. I returned night after night. The boy was always there, always pale, always kneeling to skip stones, and always the same hollow laughter, carrying across the lake, fading too soon. No footprints, no disturbance in the reeds, only the smooth, cold water. Sometimes I thought I heard whispers beneath the surface, voices too soft to understand, repeating my name in syllables I did not recognize. Or maybe it was the wind, but the mist seemed thicker when the voices came, holding the edge of the world at bay. I tried to look away, tried to leave the lake behind, but the boy waits. Every dusk, he kneels at the water, stones in hand, laughter echoing through the mist. I have never crossed the water's edge, never tried to reach him, and I do not think I would survive if I did. One evening, the moon rose full and pale. The boy was there, stone skipping, laughter soft and hollow. I stepped closer than I had dared before, and I could feel it, the pull of the lake, cold and patient, curling around my legs. It was inviting, welcoming. And I knew if I went too close, I would not come back. I stepped back. The boy's face blurred as always. He skipped one last stone across the still water. It landed perfectly, and the lake swallowed it. The mist curled around me as I left. I did not hear him laugh that night, but I could feel him there, watching. Sometimes, when the fog is thick, I imagine him kneeling at the lake's edge, and I wonder if he ever disappears completely, or if he waits beneath the water, patient, pale, and silently counting the stones that never quite touch the bottom. The tool shed sits at the edge of the tree lean. Old wood, warped and gray, lean unevenly to one side. Its padlock was rusted through years of neglect. Yet at night it feels sealed. I first heard it on a quiet evening. A muffled scream, low and strangled, rising from the darkened shed. I froze. The sound was human, and yet it came from somewhere impossible. I approached cautiously. The air smelled of wet dirt and rust, thick and metallic. The boards of the shed groaned as I stepped closer, soft under my boots. The scream rose again, jagged and desperate, echoing through the trees. I pulled on the padlock. Rust crumbled, the metal giving way under my fingers. The door creaked open. Nothing moved inside, only the smell, damp wood, decay, something sour I could not name. And still, the screams continued, muffled, almost beneath the floorboards, twisting in on themselves. I listened for footsteps. I listened for anything tangible, but the shed remained empty. I stepped back. The night air pressed against my face, sharp and cold. The tree lean shivered in silence, and the muffled cries seemed to follow me, carried through the dark. I tried to tell myself it was animals, a trapped raccoon, a bird, but the pitch, the strain, the human cadence of the sound, it told me otherwise. No creature could cry like that. The next night, I returned. The padlock was intact again, rusted and solid as if no one had touched it. The screams began before I even reached the shed. They were closer this time, sharper, urgent, and the ground beneath the shed seemed to vibrate, faintly, with a pulse of something alive. I could feel it through my boots. The screams pressed against my chest, twisting the air into cold knots. I dared not look directly at the shed, and yet I could not look away. I stepped back into the clearing. The noise receded, leaving only the hum of my own heartbeat. And when I glanced back, the padlock was gone. No metal, no chain, just the door hanging as it always had. I have stopped approaching the shed at night. But the screams, they find their way to me. Soft, muffled, a whisper pressed under the ribs. The air feels heavy when I pass the tree lean, thick with that sound I cannot name. I tell myself it is imagination, but the fear clings anyway. Sometimes, late at night, I can hear it through my cabin walls. Low and strangled, a human cry, echoing from a place I cannot reach. And I know the shed is empty only to the eyes. It holds something else, something patient, waiting. The next morning, the tree lean is still. The tool shed leans exactly the same. The padlock is rusted, firm. But I cannot shake the sound of the screams. Not ever. They live in the cold spaces behind my eyes, in the corners of the cabin, in the silent pulse of the night. And I know if I ever approach again, they will be louder, closer, impossible to ignore. The porch is quiet tonight. The air smells of pine sap and damp earth. Frost has settled on the wooden planks, cold beneath my boots. And there, in the corner, the rocking chair. I moved it once, just a little, to face the cabin door. The next morning, it was turned back toward the woods. I thought it was the wind, but the wind does not push with intent. I stopped moving it, left it facing the forest. And that night, it rocked, slowly at first, a soft creak rising above the hush of the night. I froze on the porch, the boards under my feet stiff and cold. No one else was near. No wind stirred. Yet the chair continued, swaying gently, then a little faster, a rhythm almost alive, almost impatient. I leaned closer. The moonlight glinted across the worn wood, and I could see scratches along the arms, small, jagged, deliberate, like someone or something had dragged fingernails along it. The rocking quickened. I stepped back, heart tight. The forest beyond the porch was silent. too silent. Even the pine needles seemed frozen in the air. The chair's movement was unnatural. A violent sway, back and forth, though no one sat in it. I want to call out, but my voice lodged in my throat. I wanted to run inside, but my feet felt glued to the frostbitten planks. I waited. The chair slowed, then stopped, and in the quiet, I could hear the faintest whisper of scraping, not from the chair, from the woods. I dared not look. The shadows there seemed to pulse, moving just beyond the reach of moonlight, and I could feel it. Eyes, patient, tracking from the tree line. The chair, only an extension of something unseen. I have learned not to touch it, not to sit, not to glance too long. Even from the cabin window, I can see it, waiting, watching, and sometimes I swear it rocks on its own during the day. Tonight, I sat inside, pressed to the frost-chilled glass. The chair creaked once, twice, then violently, almost angrily, rocking back and forth. I held my breath, and it stopped. The wind stills. The forest holds its silence. The chair faces the woods. Always, and I know it will never face the cabin. I do not move it anymore. I leave it for whatever watches beyond the trees, because I have learned some things wait for attention, and the chair knows how to call it. The cabin is still tonight. The fire has died to a faint glow. The wooden planks smell of old pine, dry and faintly musty. Outside, the wind stirs the trees softly, brushing the walls with shadows. I was lying awake when I first heard it. A soft singing, sweet, childlike, almost comforting, rising from beneath the floorboards. At first, I thought it was a trick of memory, a song from camp earlier in the day. But the notes, they curved around my name, softly, insistently. I sat up. The air tasted metallic and damp. I pressed my ear to the wooden floor. The voice hummed again, and it knew me, called me. I lifted the floorboard, just a crack, careful not to disturb it too much. Darkness stared back. No eyes, no movement, only the faint echo of the song curling upward. I tried to follow it with my senses. The notes drifted, winding beneath the cabin, curling under walls, wrapping around my ankles. I could hear tiny footsteps accompanying the voice, careful, soft, almost playful. But when I reached the other side, the planks were still, empty. The song did not stop. It hummed, rising and falling, weaving itself into silence. I imagined a small figure moving beneath the floorboards, waiting, watching, or perhaps waiting for me. I tried to sleep, pulled the blankets close, pressing my face to the pillow, but the song seeped through the wood, soft and coaxing, curling around my chest, calling, patient, sweet but wrong. I whispered my own name back into the cabin. The song answered lower, twisting in tone. I did not recognize the notes, yet I felt their meaning, a warning, a presence. I have learned not to lift the boards anymore, not to follow the sound, not to breathe too deeply, in case the melody wraps itself around me. The night stretches on. The song continues beneath my feet, soft, childlike, patient, calling my name, and I cannot see it, cannot touch it, cannot know what waits in that darkness. Sometimes, in the quietest hours, I imagine the voice lifting me, pulling me under the floorboards, and I feel the hollow weight of the planks, pressing down, waiting. I do not go near that corner of the cabin. I do not step over cracks. I lie awake, listening. The song hums. The tiny footsteps circle beneath the floorboards, and the voice whispers my name again. The mess hall is empty, gray and hollow. Rain taps against the broken windows, uneven, cold. I stepped inside, boots echoing on the worn wooden floor. Tables stand in silent rows, abandoned plates scattered, dust motes dancing in the dim light. I saw him first during the storm. A tall, thin figure, sitting at a table near the center, motionless, his head bowed, fingers folded, and then lightning struck. The chair was empty. No one remained. Only the shadow lingered, stretching across the floorboards like spilled ink. I felt the air tighten around me, cold, damp, metallic. Every creak of the roof sounded louder, echoing as if someone or something was pacing overhead. I wanted to leave, But the figure remained in my mind, its presence bleeding into the room, pressing against my chest. I heard a soft exhale behind me. I turned. Nothing, only the sound of rain and the sway of the broken windows. Each morning, the cabin windows are covered in small, wet handprints, dozens of them, pressed on the outside, pale and dripping. I have never seen a child near the cabin at night, yet the prints return, morning after morning, delicate fingers splayed across the glass. I touched one once. Cold, faintly sticky. It left a mark on my skin, though the print vanished from the glass moments later. The air tastes damp and metallic when I approach the window, and sometimes I feel breath against my cheek, soft, fleeting, almost playful. I tried cleaning the glass. The prints returned before the sun reached its peak. I began avoiding the windows, walking past them quickly, eyes down. Even then, I feel the weight of dozens of unseen hands, reaching, waiting, pressing against the cabin walls. At night, I dream of the fingers, tracing shapes across my face, pressing lightly against my chest, and I wake with a hollow ache in my bones. The old stone well hums at night, low and steady like static in the air. I knelt beside it once, tossing a pebble into the darkness. It made no sound upon landing. The air near the well is colder than the forest around it, heavy, metallic, waiting. Sometimes I hear whispers carried from below, names, requests, pleas, or perhaps threats. I cannot tell. I tried calling down once, asking if someone was there. No answer came, only the hum, steady and low, pressing into my chest. The ground near the edge feels unstable. I swear I feel movement below my feet, shifting shadows, and sometimes I glimpse a pale shape at the rim, leaning over, just beyond what I can see. I do not approach the well after dusk. The hum continues, no matter how far I walk. I can hear it through the trees, winding into the cabin, curling around my chest. One morning, a new trail appears. Black ash, strewn across the forest floor, glittering faintly in the weak sunlight. It wound between the trees, a path that should not exist. I followed it once. The air grew colder with every step. Branches scraped like fingernails against my arms. Whispers curled between the trunks, carrying words I did not recognize. The ash sparkled faintly. Every footstep I took seemed to vanish instantly, as if the path erased itself behind me. And deeper into the woods, I heard soft voices, calling from the shadows. Not shouting, not angry, just calling. I turned back. The path ended where I began, though it seemed longer than it should have been. I ran, and even then I felt the ash beneath my shoes, soft and cold, lingering in the soles of my boots. The dining hall smells of dust and mildew. Sunlight creeps through cracks in the boards, falling in thin lines across the floor. I noticed them while sweeping, faint points of light above, shifting as the plank settled. I looked up. Dozens of eyes blinked slowly from the ceiling cracks. Small, pale, waiting. I counted them once, then quickly looked away. The room feels heavier when I stare. Every breath hangs in the air longer than it should. I hear a soft scratching, as though the eyes move beneath the boards, watching me. I cannot stay long in the hall. Even during the day, I feel them, blinking, patient, silent, and I know if I remain too long, they will not simply watch. The quiet hums around me, tightening the air, and then silence, that pressing, suffocating silence, wraps around my chest. The night is still, the campfire long dead, leaving only shadows that stretch into the trees. I lie in my cabin, listening. A shrill whistle pierces the air. High-pitched, familiar. Every camper knew it once, a signal to gather. But no counselors remain. I hold my breath. The sound rises again, closer, circling the cabin like it can see me. It hums, wavers, pulls at the edges of the forest. My chest tightens. I do not move. The whistle winds through the pines, each note stretching longer than it should. Familiar tunes twisted, distorted, mocking. I know it knows my name, or at least it will learn it soon. I imagine someone standing in the dark, unseen, calling me out. Step by step, the whistle grows louder. Patient, relentless. I pull the blanket over my head, but the notes wrap around me. I have not answered, and yet it comes closer every night. Closer, until I fear it will not stop. One cabin feels alive. I noticed it when the fog rolled in. Its walls swell and sink, as though inhaling. The air tastes damp, metallic, thick. I press my palm to the door. It moves slightly, warm against my skin like a pulse. Inside, the room is still. The floorboards creak faintly under invisible weight. I step in, and the walls expand, contract. A sigh of air or something else brushes my neck. I tried to leave, but the door seems farther than before. The cabin inhales, and I feel in my lungs, heavy and oppressive. The metallic tang grows stronger. I do not dare touch the walls again. Even standing in the center, I can feel its rhythm, patient, watching. Sometimes I hear a faint whisper behind the planks. I do not know if it is inside the cabin or the cabin itself speaking. I leave quickly, heart tight. The cabin breathes long after I have gone. A lantern lights the way. I thought the outhouse was empty, old and forgotten, but inside a figure stands, head tilted against the wall. Still, I step closer, heart thudding. Then I open the door. Nothing. Empty. The smell of damp wood. The faint tang of decay. No shape, no weight. I thought I imagined it. But when I step back, I feel eyes on my back. The lantern flickers. Shadows stretch along the walls, elongating. The figure does not exist. Yet I know it waits. Patient, silent, and I will not return to the outhouse after dark. The tall grass bends under a wind that does not exist. A soft song drifts across the field, carried by no visible source. I follow it once. The melody is gentle, almost comforting, but the grass beneath my feet is flattened in perfect circles, warm as if someone stood there moments ago. No one is there. The air smells faintly of ash, damp and sweet. The song rises and falls, circling me, calling me forward. I step carefully, every footfall soft. The melody shifts when I pause, turning like it knows my hesitation. I look back. Nothing. Yet I feel watched, always, by something unseen. I retreat. The song fades slowly, but the warmth of the flattened grass lingers under my shoes. And I know it will return tomorrow night. The mirror hangs crooked on the wall, its surface cracked, catching the moonlight in jagged slices. I see movement, campers long gone, reflected in its glass, walking silently, bending, disappearing behind cracks. One figure turns, stares directly at me, smiling faintly. Not a child I recognize, not anyone alive. The cabin smells faintly of antiseptic and decay. The air tastes metallic, thick. I try to step back, but the reflection holds me. I hear whispers from behind the walls. The eyes in the mirror blink in time with my heartbeat. And I know it watches. It waits. The glass will not let me leave unchanged. The old oak stretches high, gnarled and gray, its roots curling through the earth. A rope swing hangs from one thick branch, swaying gently in a wind that does not exist. I approach once, drawn by the faint creak of rope. It moves on its own, back and forth, back and forth. A soft, high-pitched laughter drifts through the branches. Light, playful, yet hollow. I touch the rope. Cold, rough, slightly damp. The laughter rises, echoing in the empty clearing. I step back. Sometimes I see small shapes in the shadows of the oak. Children? Ghosts? Or nothing at all. I cannot be sure. The swing rocks all night. And sometimes when I lie in the cabin, I hear faint laughter drifting through the trees. Calling. Patient. Waiting. The bell tower stands at the camp's edge. Rusted. Broken. Forgotten. At midnight, it tolls 12 times. Each clang echoes farther than it should, lingering in the cold night air. No one is there to ring it. The rope does not move. Yet the bell rings. I step closer once, boots crunching on frostbitten grass. The sound vibrates in my chest, low and hollow. A lingering hum presses against my ears. The tower feels alive, patient, old, watching. The bells toll again, and I feel something shift in the darkness. I step back, breath tight. The echoes follow me to the cabin. Even when I close my eyes, I hear the 12 strokes. and I know they will never stop. The desk is dusty, abandoned with splintered in places. I open the journal carefully. The pages smell faintly of mildew and ink. It describes campers who vanished long ago. Names, dates, small notes about laughter, campfires, and disappearing footsteps. The last entry chills me. Do not follow them into the woods. They're not children anymore. I drop the journal. The floorboards creak beneath unseen weight. A breeze, or something else, whispers across the pages. I feel eyes on me. Patient. Waiting. I do not open the journal again. Even so, I dream of the missing campers. And I hear faint footsteps echoing on the floorboards, calling softly. It is 3 a.m. The wind is still. The cabin is silent, save for my shallow breathing. Knock. Soft, deliberate. Someone or something asks to be let in. The words repeat, polite. Please, let me in. I hold my breath. No one is there when I look. Only shadows. The knocking continues. Patient. Repeating. Echoing through the empty cabin. I do not answer. I do not move. But each knock presses against the walls, a gentle, insistent rhythm. And I know if I open the door, it will not leave. I lie awake, listening. The knocking becomes whispers, circling the cabin, brushing my ears with words I do not understand. I will not answer. Not tonight. Not ever. The final night comes. The fire pit lights itself. Flames twist in colors I cannot name, green, violet, deep crimson. Shadows gather around the circle, tall and indistinct. I watch from the edge. The forest falls still. The trees hold their breath. No sound rises above the crackling flames. No movement breaks the silence. Only the twisting shadows, patient and waiting. I step closer. The heat washes over me. The colors ripple. Shapes flicker. I feel eyes pressing from the darkness. The fire speaks in silence. Not words, but intention. It waits. And I understand that tonight, nothing will return the same. I leave the circle. The fire dances, the shadows follow. And the forest, vast and quiet, swallows everything.